Harley has had many ventures even beyond motorcycle products, including things like lampshades and golf carts, and even beef jerky. In this video, though, we are focusing on motorcycles, and the inspiration for this video came from none other than my mom and some of the pictures that she sent to me after visiting the Harley Museum with my dad. Though it won't make the list as it was just customized to look this way, the bejeweled bagger actually got me thinking of this idea. Some guy took his Harley and covered it in every kind of bedazzle imaginable, but then the icing on the cake was this, a Harley Davidson moped. And so I knew I had to make this video. So without further ado, let's look at 10 Harley Davidson motorcycles from history that weren't very Harley. Let's start with that scooter, the Harley Davidson Topper. Now this was the one and only true scooter ever produced by Harley, and it was in production from 1960 to 1965. This was obviously a response to the popularity primarily of European scooters like the Vespa and Lambretta and others, powered by a 165cc single-cylinder two-stroke making about 9 horsepower. Now in terms of specs, it was on par with the competition, but stylistically, it wasn't the most beautiful scooter available. It also wasn't really recognizable Harley either, if that's even possible. And various problems plagued the Topper, from its variable transmission to overheating problems. It wasn't exactly Harley's most popular offering. Now I liken this attempt from Harley to make a scooter for the mass market to the British attempts at the same thing. Both American and British companies were known for making big, powerful machines, and when it came time to make civilized, simple, but appealing scooters, they would just come out looking kind of weird or off. Harley soon decided to leave it to the Italians and Germans to make scooters and moved back to making, their normal, heavy, loud motorcycles. Now, number 9 goes to Harley's partnership and really ownership of Italian motorcycle and airplane manufacturer Aermacchi, and the somewhat odd motorcycles that were labeled as Harley Davidsons during this time, and specifically the Sprint. Now this was Harley Davidson essentially trying to go Italian decades before they would own part of MV Agusta, and originally the Aermacchi made Harleys look like little single-cylinder Ducatis or MV Agustas, with red paint and that very not cruiser stance. Now the Sprints would take on many forms over the rather long lifespan, ultimately dying under AMF's ownership of Harley. These really were pretty good bikes, and they did help diversify Harley's offerings. They could be bought in off-road trim and other options, but ultimately as Harley would make bigger, more powerful motorcycles through the 60s and 70s, and as Japanese lightweight competition would become greater, these bikes just didn't stand up to their competitors. In many ways, the Aermacchi acquisition would mark a trend for Harley that is too little, too late. Jumping on trends never works for Harley, and it's really no different here. There are some cool little Harley Aermacchi bikes from the 60s and 70s, however, and they are quite affordable in comparison to other classic Harleys, but that's really because they're not really Harleys. All right, next up, we actually have a more modern bike, which is the Street 500 and the Street 750. Now, I did not even know that these bikes existed until recently. I was actually at Home Depot and I parked next to what I thought was, a typical run-of-the-mill Harley cruiser, but then I got out of the car and I got a closer look and I really started to doubt that this was even a Harley, even though it did have the bar and shield right there on the tank. This was like a Harley Davidson that you bought off Wish.com and slapped the label on. Everything about it was wrong. The proportions are weird, the tank shape. I mean, they don't look that bad in pictures, but in real life, they're just goofy looking little machines. These were actually around for a good few years, but ultimately, I don't think that they really worked for Harley in bringing in loads of new riders, maybe because they look nothing like what new riders actually want. They just look like cheap sort of knockoffs of Harley's other bikes. And for me, it isn't that these are smaller displacement machines that makes them not so Harley. I honestly don't know what it is, but trust me, when you see one in person, you can just tell these are not coming from the same place and the same spirit as Harley's other bikes. As much as I'm not a huge fan of Harley's big cruisers, they do have a level of fit and finish that in many ways is unmatched from other companies, and these bikes just did not have that feel. All right, number 7 goes to Harley's one and only mini bike, the X90, or as some call it, the Shortster, which is pretty cute, I'm not gonna lie. Now this bike was in production from 73 through 75, again, a too little too late response to the mini bike craze, brought about by Honda for the US market starting in about 68. I've got a whole video about Honda's mini trail and the history of mini bikes if you guys want to check it out. I'll have a card pop up at the top right now if you want to watch that. Anyways, like the bikes themselves, the mini bike craze was pretty short. You know, it didn't take long for the mini trail itself to essentially turn into a little dirt bike for kids, and the idea of having a small little motorcycle that you could pack away in your station wagon and take camping and anybody could ride it, well, that was kind of already on its way out by the mid-70s when Harley released their version of the mini bike. It was also a two-stroke developed again with Aermacchi. Now, this wasn't a bad bike. It was just not as good and more expensive than Honda's offering, and it would never be able to take hold in the home market where Honda and other Japanese offerings were becoming more and more popular. Plus, it was a traditional 4-speed with a clutch, unlike Honda's simple semi-automatic setup for the mini trail. Though these have become a bit of a cult classic, for me this bike isn't very Harley, and you can tell this with the other Aermacchi bikes as well. Today, manufacturers have figured out how to have other companies develop their bikes without the general public really being able to tell. Triumph's new Baby Bonnevilles, for example, will probably, feel like real Triumphs, despite the fact that, they're not really being developed by Triumph. But yeah, not so with the X90 and quite a few other bikes from Harley. These just don't really feel like Harley's other bikes from this time. All right, number 6 goes to the original V-Rod, and it's not that this bike is a bad bike like some of the other bikes on this list. It's just out of the norm for Harley, as the original V-Rod truly was a performance machine, arguably the first of a sort of class of American muscle cruisers. Officially known as the VRSC, or V-Twin Racing Street Custom, this is a platform Harley produced from 99 all the way through 2017. Now, there were many iterations, which we don't have time to cover, but I think for me, this was Harley not being themselves, but in a really good way. The V-Rod came out in 99, producing a crazy amount of torque and horsepower for a cruiser at this time. I mean, sure, it wasn't a sport bike, in so many other ways, but for comparison, a Gixxer 750 in 1999, which is like the quintessential sport bike, didn't produce a whole lot more power than a V-Rod. Again, there's more to it than all that. I mean, a Gixxer 750 is going to beat a V-Rod on the track any day, but this really was impressive stuff because this V-Rod sort of created a subculture within motorcycling. They were highly customizable, great for drag racing, and incredibly advanced for their time for Harley. Liquid-cooled, double overhead cam, and they were produced in partnership with Porsche. This is the kind of stuff that when Harley does it, it just works, right? It was exciting, it was fun, and it was a great bike for them. Personally, I think that Harley should produce a V4 version of the V-Rod for today's audience, producing like, say, 180 horsepower. But anyways, the V-Rod isn't very Harley, and I mean that in the best way possible. All right, number 5 goes to the XLCR Cafe Racer, produced from 77 through 79. Now, this is a bike that didn't work for Harley. This bike was not a success, but it's become quite a collector's piece today, not only because it's rare and not very many of them were made, but also because it is so unique. The styling is inherently retro and not exactly retro American, but today looking at this bike, it also feels rather modern, like something a company would drop today as a retro British bike. In a lot of ways it looks like a W800 Cafe, for example. The overall design is what's so interesting about this bike. They used a modified XR750 fuel tank, Siamese 2-into-2 exhaust. The exhaust feels very American, but then it ends up looking very British with it sort of just going down both sides of the bike, versus Harley's traditional exhaust where both pipes are on the same side. It's a really intentional and interesting design. I could see a bike like this doing really well for Harley today, because for me, though this bike is trying to accomplish a more British style, it still does look thoroughly Harley. People talk about how Harley should have jumped on the cafe racer craze of the 2000s, and I wonder if they haven't because this bike was a failure, but in many ways this bike was way ahead of its time. It isn't very Harley, but it's not Harley in a good way, kind of like the last bike. All right, this one had to be on the list, the Livewire. Now, the Livewire isn't a bad product per se, and with all credit to Harley, they really were the first major motorcycle manufacturer to make a fully electric, proper motorcycle, and by a long shot. This bike looks good, it looks very modern while still having that Harley DNA, it's fast, It's a bit heavy, but it's a good first attempt at an electric motorcycle. It's just so expensive. If Harley had come out of the gate with the current prices for the Livewire, it could have potentially been a game changer, but it doesn't change the fact that it has terrible range. You're still spending premium motorcycle money on a bike that's really only good for around town. If you want to take this bike out and have serious fun out on the twisties, you're going to be draining that battery so fast, and you're going to be stressing about the range the entire time. It needs double or triple the range. And I know that's not possible, but I'm just saying that's what a bike like this needs. I guess you could say it's thoroughly Harley in that it's almost what it needs to be, like many of the bikes we've looked at. But for perspective, some of you might want me to put the Pan America on this list, and I haven't for a few reasons. Although the Pan America is, of course, Harley jumping on a trend like a lot of the other bikes on here. To me, the Livewire's on the list and the Pan America isn't, because the Pan America truly is a touring motorcycle built for American terrain and travel. It's the kind of bike you can jump on, hit the American road, hit the highways, and be gone. Whereas the Livewire just isn't. Harley's DNA is linked to American culture and American travel. So if you have a big, fast Harley that then can't go down the highway for long periods of time with comfort, to me, it's just not doing what it should do as a Harley. So for me, the Pan America fits with Harley's DNA, and the Livewire just doesn't. But I do love Mountain Dew Livewire. That is a good product. Number 3 goes really to the first small Harley, the 125S. Now, this motorcycle has a long, odd history from plans taken from Nazi Germany following World War II after Germany's defeat. Harley needed a small option coming out of World War II, so they were granted some of the German manufacturer DKW's blueprints, and that's how the 125cc two-stroke came about for Harley that would then evolve into the Hummer. With as many two-strokes as have existed in Harley's history, as far as I know, Harley has never actually themselves built and designed a two-stroke engine from the ground up. I could be wrong about that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe they have. As much as the early 125S and later Hummers do kind of look like Harleys, at least in some ways, these really weren't very Harley. But out of all these bikes, this one has a pretty strong, long run and was relatively popular, existing in production for about 15 years or so. Next up, we have the M50, and we're back with Aermacchi again with this little Italian bike that, isn't even really in Harley Davidson sheep's clothes. These early Aermacchis really have no Harley DNA. The later AMF ones were styled like other bikes in Harley's lineup, but these were just mostly red, Italian-looking machines. And I don't really understand the need to have Aermacchi come along to develop two-stroke machines for Harley. They'd built the 125S and the Hummer. I don't know why they couldn't just keep developing two-strokes. Granted, those were stolen plans, but they should have been able to continue developing it and updating it with different displacements, but for whatever reason, let's be real, it's laziness, Harley didn't want to do that, so they just let another company build their bikes, which just never works in my opinion. I've always found it funny that riders complain about how current motorcycles are not manufactured in their home company, like as though that's a new thing for companies like Harley, but Harley has been doing this forever. Anyways, these are little 50cc bikes made for just a few years. Nothing very interesting really about them. That's all I got. Okay, last on our list, the first ever from the ground up built race bike from Harley for AMA Superbikes. Liquid cooled, fuel injected, overhead cam, everything that Harley was not doing in the 1980s. This is the VR1000 race bike. It took forever for Harley to develop this bike. It was behind the curve once it was released, but man, is it cool. Harley did technically win a race, but a red flag at the end put the bike back a lap and the win was taken from them. So technically this bike never actually won a race, but it had serious tech. It had quad cams, so double cams over each cylinder, loads of carbon fiber bodywork, alloy frame and swing arm. And best of all, it was completely developed from scratch. No existing Harley parts were used. Now, I don't know Harley's business model all that well, but man, a sport bike like this would be cool today. Something like the VR 1000, even if it wasn't for racing. I think people would be really excited to ride an American sport bike, like a true American sport bike. For me, this is the ultimately not Harley, as it has no Harley parts, and it was used for something that Harley really never really excelled in, at least not in about a century. But man, it's cool. Okay, there you guys have it. I'd love to hear if there are any other Harleys that you think should have made this list, or maybe if you think that some of these Harleys didn't belong here and that they were very Harley. Hope you guys are doing well. We're almost to 50,000 subs, which is insane. So seriously, big thanks to all of you guys. And if you want to subscribe, I would really appreciate it. Anyways, we'll see you guys in the next one. Ride safe.